friends, 2 time zones, and a shared love of stories.
I'm Freya.
And I'm Jamie.
Bridging time zones 1 chapter at a time.
Welcome to Once Upon a Time Zone.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Once Upon a Time Zone. This week we have the most amazing guest. If you don't know her, this is Fonda Lee. I'm sure if you listen to our podcast, you probably know Fonda. We talk about your books all the time, completely obsessed with them.
Thank you.
But for anyone listening who Fonda is new to, she is the award-winning New York Times best-selling author of the Greenbone Saga, which we know and love. She is also the author of The Untethered Sky, Zero Boxer, The Exoduology, and then the Breathmarked duology. And then her newest book is The Last Contract of Isako, and it is a standalone space opera where basically corporate samurai fight beneath the merciless stars and death is always just a mere breath away. Welcome to the podcast, Fonda.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Now, am I correct in saying you just came off your book tour, or you're just wrapping up book tour for Isako?
Yes.
How has that been?
It was very hectic and awesome. So I hit a lot of cities, a few that I hadn't been to before. Was just in Toronto. Along with Pittsburgh, Austin, Atlanta, St. Louis, New York, and back in Boston. And I have a couple weeks of downtime where I'm back at home, and then I head over to the UK next week. So I'll be back on the road, and I haven't toured there before, so I'm excited to do that as well.
That is so much fun. I'm always so, just impressed at what is your schedule like when you're on tour? Because I feel like there's a new location every day, so it's like
there is.
Flying
it
in the
takes
morning.
on a certain routine that is predictable but exhausting. So you essentially fly to a new place each morning, you check into the hotel, and then you get ready for an event. You do your book event in the evening, grab something to eat, go back to the hotel, go to sleep, and then rinse and repeat. So
Oh my gosh.
every day you're getting on a plane and you kind of lose track of where you
are,
what time zone you're in.
Once Upon a Time Zone, there we go. I love that. It must be so fun though. Is there like a favorite tour stop that you've had for Isako?
Oh my gosh, all of them have been great in different ways. I don't know if I have like a favorite. There's certainly cities that I really love visiting. So like New York, I always love visiting New York, and then Toronto because it feels like coming home. And I used to live in Toronto, so I was really glad that I was able to go to Toronto on tour this time. And then there's like cities that I just am really fond of. I went to Austin. I hadn't been back to Austin for a while, and I'd never visited Atlanta before. So it was great to even like have 18 hours to see. I didn't really see much, to be fair.
A little bit,
but the weather was great, so it was still a nice time there. And then and St. Louis and Pittsburgh were both great stops. Pittsburgh was the launch date, and so a great crowd came on. There was every stop, and there's always been something cool. So like at one of my stops, my audiobook narrator Dylan Sickles was there in Pittsburgh, and I'd never met him before in person. And so that was fun. I had one of the fan artists for the Greenbone Saga who was really an early fan artist whose work I totally remembered. He came up and introduced himself, Miles Bensky. And then Ricky, who's an actor and model who modeled Hilo in the gold edition of the Greenbone Saga, was there and came out in Atlanta. So every stop has had something cool and memorable.
So cool.
Yeah. And,
that's amazing.
Yeah. Plus it's also just a chance to visit some awesome bookstores and talk to some fantastic fellow authors. So it is very tiring, but also a fantastic way to kick off the book launch.
So we also, as tradition on our podcast, every episode, we quickly mention what we're currently reading, if we have anything. So I don't know if you've had time to be reading very much at the moment, but if you're currently reading anything or have read something recently, feel free to share.
So I have not had a ton of reading time, but my most recent book, which I just finished a couple of days ago, was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Oh, I've
Oh,
been
have you
wanting
guys
to
read
read
it?
this one. I've been wanting to.
Okay.
Actually, I've read Recursion and then I
Yeah.
recently read Upgrade. So
Okay.
Dark Matter's next.
So Dark Matter is my first Blake Crouch novel. So
Okay.
I haven't read Recursion yet, and I really enjoyed it. It's the twisty sci-fi thriller, but with like some kind of deeper themes about like choices in life, and yeah,
hmm
definitely.
hmm
And I did because of traveling and not having a ton to read. I listened to the audiobook, which was great. I
Ooh,
also
okay.
yeah, love
Amazing.
audiobooks.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to do Recursion next because that one,
Okay.
Yeah.
it'll just mess with your brain. And by the
Okay.
end, you'll
Okay.
be like, oh, what's going on? So good. For my current read, I'll share next. Actually, funny story. I recently just finished this book. You might have heard of it. It's called Mark of the Warrior. It's by,
I have heard of that.
yeah, it's by these authors, Fonda Lee
It
and
comes out
Shannon Lee.
soon, doesn't
Who
it?
knew? Yeah. So yeah, I recently read that one. It was wonderful. Loved it so much. Finished off the Breathmarked duology, which I think more people need to pick up and read. I think, yeah, just what you've done with that world with the twins and the push and pull of that, I think was just so clever and well done. I love the martial arts in it, obviously. So yeah, fun story. That's just
Oh,
what
I'm so glad that
I've
you had a
read.
good time with it. I'm excited for it to be out, and it was both a challenge and a lot of fun to be working on Mark of the Warrior and the Last Contract of Isako concurrently because they're such
Yeah.
different books and very different protagonists, right? Like
hmm
grizzled veteran who's on her last job versus like this hot-headed young guy who's like in martial arts tournaments. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a fun contrast. But yeah,
Yeah.
excited about Mark of the Warrior coming out in October. Yay!
Yay. Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you about that because with a double book release this year, what does that look like with your schedule? Like
Oh, it's
how do you
hell.
balance
It's
all of
just terrible.
that? Just being honest.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't planned that way exactly, but sometimes that's just the way it works out with book launches.
hmm
And I didn't have a book come out last year, but honestly, it was because I had like a cross country move and I had like delays on my end of like, being able to like hit certain like manuscript milestones. So like it just kind of ended up with like the
hmm
two books coming out in the same year. So it does feel like I've got to, get through launching Isako with very little time before I have to launch Mark of the Warrior. So
hmm
I don't expect to get much rest this year. Just like being upfront about it. But it does make it hard to focus on writing because writing really requires having dedicated chunks of time when I am at home and
hmm
can like really do deep creative work. And that just doesn't really happen when you're traveling a lot and on the promotion circuit and going to events and festivals and things like that. But
hmm
it'll be fine. It'll be okay.
Are you embarking on tour again for Mark of the Warrior?
I do not know. Plans are
Oh,
still being
okay.
formed. So yeah, don't know yet what the plans are going to be.
Amazing. So fun. Um, Freya, what's your current read?
I got so lost in that. I completely forgot that was what started this conversation. I am currently reading Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. So a big,
Yeah.
chunky
Chonker.
read.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while,
Doorstopper.
but
Yep.
hmm
and I have heard that this is the most dense information dumping one of the series. So we're kind of just going straight in, hoping for the best.
Yep.
But yeah,
Get your brain on. Okay, so Fonda, we're going to talk about books, but first things first, I've heard little whisperings online that you're a little bit of like an Eggs Benedict aficionado. Is that the word for it?
I
Um,
am. I
so
do
I
love a good
just,
eggs benedict.
yeah, I just used to know because like Freya and I are both foodies as well. What's like your perfect Eggs Benedict?
Oh my gosh. Um that's a tough one. Because
Yeah.
I do like although I do like kind of the traditional eggs benedict with like Canadian
hmm
ham, I actually, maybe it's getting older and healthier, but I like the eggs Florentine that usually is like tomato and spinach.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
comes
But the
with the
key,
age.
the key is always the hollandaise sauce. Like that's like defines, sort of a solid eggs benedict with like an A or S tier eggs benedict is like how good the hollandaise sauce is. And I think that's the thing is like I would not really dare to try to make good hollandaise sauce at home, and so eggs benedict is like one of those treats that I'll have when I go out for breakfast.
Yes.
So like, I don't even know how many calories a hollandaise sauce is, but I don't want to know. I'm sure
We don't need to know that.
Yeah, we don't need to know that.
We don't need to know that. We just enjoy. We love our hollandaise as it is.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Getting into the Last Contract of Isako. So Freya and I both absolutely loved it. But for anyone who hasn't read this book, can you give a quick synopsis?
So The Last Contract of Isako is my first adult science fiction novel. It's a standalone. I have been describing it as a dystopian cyberpunk corporate espionage thriller with like kind of with influences from Akira Kurosawa and Dune and John Wick kind of mashed together. It's essentially a story of a aging swordsman woman on her one last job. Takes place on this isolated colony planet called Hilo, which is a frozen tundra that is lost all contact with Earth and is a company town run by one corporation that established the colony centuries ago. And the main character, Isako, is a contractor, and she's the best of the contractors. And in this world, the A-tier contractors are essentially like corporate samurai. They serve one of the elite directors who are the ruling class on this planet. And she has just lost a war and is a Ronin now. And she gets pulled into this final assignment that turns out to lead her into a mystery that's a lot more than she bargained for.
And it's so much fun. It truly is so much fun. Speaking of Isako, though, so yeah, you have written this older protagonist that we don't typically see in a sci-fi or fantasy. Usually we'll see kind of younger characters just coming into their powers, and both of us loved that Isako was like middle-aged, past her prime. Her knees were giving out in certain moments, and there was a lot more like reflection, I want to say, throughout the book on kind of the things she's done previously in her career. So at this point, I mean, I feel like, written so many different characters across kind of like all stages of life, all walks of life across all of your books. How do you kind of switch your mindset into like jumping into these different characters as you write them?
That is very pertinent to what I was talking about with writing Mark of the Warrior and Last Contract of Isako roughly the same time. Honestly, it takes a little bit of like just getting into that world and getting into the mindset of that character. And when I write characters, I just try to make them feel as fully formed and as real as I possibly can. I just want them to come across like human beings. So it really is just getting to know them in the process of writing. And writing a character like Isako, who has a lot more experience, a lot more baggage, a different outlook on life, versus someone like Jun, who is very kind of like young and driven and still very like impetuous. It just is like very much like putting on a coat and then taking it off and putting on a different coat.
Right.
So I think the thing that makes character development really work for me is when I can like see a character through the eyes of the other characters. So, for example, Isako becomes much more fun. This is a hard book to talk about without spoilers.
It
but
kind of
Isako
is, yeah.
becomes a much more fleshed out character in my mind when I see her through the point of view of like other characters who come to the story. And then like she becomes more like defined, because you're not just getting her perspective on herself, you're also getting the perspective on her from someone else. And the multi-POV viewpoints in the Greenbone saga, for example, are what helped me to really get a handle on the characters in that, because they are so they're so connected to each other with familial bonds that like each of them has different relationships with each of the other members of the family. So it was really writing about the family and the relationships in the family that helped to define those characters for me.
Amazing. Yeah, I can
Wow,
definitely see that. Is there like a favorite age range that you found yourself like that you prefer to write in?
Like age range of characters or age
Yeah,
category of book?
like age range of characters, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I like the young characters, but I also like the older characters. And I think that like writing the Greenbone saga kind of like defined the breadth of a generation for me when it came to following characters through a very long period of time.
Yeah.
And so like those characters started out for me as young characters. Like Andon, for example, starts off as like a teenager.
Yes.
And then by the end of the story, he's like middle-aged. And so
Yeah.
so no, I guess the answer is no, I don't have a favorite time period. I just have characters that I want to follow. And depending on the needs of the narrative and the nature of the story, I'll engage with them at whatever like period in life it is that they need to be off on doing whatever adventure it is that the story demands.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And then kind of on that, I guess, would you, because I kind of want this story, but would you ever come back to write Isako as a younger character and kind of write about her life before?
I don't know about that. I don't think so, because I think there's like inherently like a lack of tension when you do a story for a character whose like ending you already is already known.
Right.
I think like if she came back, and I'm not saying I'm going to do this because I do think of Isako as very much a standalone novel, but if she came back, it would probably be as a secondary character in someone else's story. So that's where I think it like kind of makes sense. And I dealt with this to some extent when I was writing The Jade Setter of John Loon, which is the prequel novella to the Greenbone saga, where I was like, well, it doesn't feel right for it to be a prequel story about any of the main characters, because I think there's just an inherent like loss of tension because of the fact that you've already read everything that's happened to them following. But I can make the story about someone else, and the other characters become pieces of that story, and they have their own like appearances and their role in the story that's like maybe different from what it was in like the main story. So I don't think a prequel about Isako, but you know, I'd never say never.
It's a cool planet. It's a cool planet to come back to.
It's a cool planet. I mean, I would want to live there. That's for sure.
No. Cool to read about. Yeah, that's it.
So both Jamie and I absolutely love reading about platonic love in books. And obviously that was a major theme in this book. How do you draw the line between like platonic love and a romantic bond? And like, do you have that intention going into these characters, or does that kind of develop?
In this case, it definitely was my intent going into the story, because I really wanted to depict a strong and supportive platonic male-female friendship. I just don't think that we get that in fiction that much, especially in speculative fiction, which is having a huge romantasy era. Great for all the romantasy readers. But for this particular story, Isako doesn't need a romantic subplot. What she needs is a friend. Like, that's what she needs. And so Rain Cobb, who is like this old colleague that she's lost touch with, who comes back into her life at this like crucial juncture to help her with the assignment, but also to make her question things about the path that they've taken and life and like big questions about like where she goes from here. That was a role that I envisioned for him from the beginning that was not connected to them having a romance. And in fact, I think it would have been less effective for it to be a romance because there's it's just, that's not what the story is or needs. Like, that's not what would help her in that moment. And so that was very much like at the forefront of my mind from the start. There are other stories where like maybe I don't know initially that it's going to go this way. Like I have an inkling it might.
Okay, yeah.
So like in the Greenbone Saga, Shay and Woon, that was like a romance that that like I didn't initially plan out when I was writing Jade City. And then as I was like developing the full arc of the trilogy, that's when I like kind of realized where those two characters would end up. So yeah, sometimes it's very, very well planned and sometimes it's not as well planned.
Yeah.
Love
Well,
that.
I absolutely loved like the platonic bond between these two though. I think you're so right. Yeah, I loved reading about it. You don't read about that very much. And also talking about love and family dynamics and everything. So in this company on the planet, people are like forced to just be employees. Like that's it. It comes before family, before friends and love. What inspired you to write a story like that and like tell a story of characters finding love and just like supporting each other in a world that really does not encourage that and just encourages you to work for the company?
Yeah, so definitely part of Isako in this world comes from my previous career in business. I was a management consultant. I had a period of time where I was working 70 hours and flying to client sites and doing a whole lot of PowerPoint and a whole lot of Excel and had the airline status and also just like kind of using that idea of like client service and just being like a corporate badass and then taking it to like its extreme, right? And like kind of imagining, okay, like what would like a more extreme version of this be like in a world where there's just the company. And it was the idea of a company town was really fascinating to me because in the history of company towns, they have a utopian side to them. Like there definitely were company towns in history where they were very paternalistic. They gave like housing and healthcare to their employees, and they built churches and roads, and like there was this sense that the company took care of you, and would like you had this community that was based around where you worked. Yeah. On the other hand, there were also company towns that were super exploitative and where people were basically debt to the company for their whole lives, and the money that they made was like in scrip, and you could only spend it at company businesses, and you paid rent to the company, but you were in debt to them, and so you could never leave. And so there was both like the utopian and the dystopian side. Yeah. And I imagined that in like a space exploration situation and combined it with like this idea of, okay, what if private space exploration was to set up a colony, and now this colony is a company town, and the directors are going to have management consultants, and like and of course they're going to have swords because swords are cool in space.
Of course.
Yeah. So that kind of that's where the idea of the contractors and Isako came from, was that plus this kind of parallel between the client service code of like consultants and corporate with like the like code of Bushido and like the samurai films where you're expected to give undying loyalty to the Lord. Like even though some of these lords could be really corrupt and not great people, but like there was this expectation of like loyalty and servitude. And so I kind of blended those ideas together in this setting.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, while reading it, I was like, this planet seems very extreme, like the whole company side of it, but it's, like, is it that far off from corporate? Because, like, when I worked in visual effects in film and TV, and I feel like a lot of the mentality with that industry was, like, if we don't finish this movie, everyone's gonna die. And, like, everything was just made as, like, such a big deal. And, as a person, I'm like, no one's going to die if this movie doesn't get finished. It's literally just entertainment. But, in Isako, in the Last Contract of Isako, we're literally working towards trying to make this planet livable. So it kind of is like, if we don't get the job done, we will actually all
We will
die.
literally die, yes.
Yeah, it's like very much like obviously an exaggerated version of that, but like there are so many parallels to real world companies and corporate stuff and all of that that apply. And yeah, I just found that really fascinating to read. So absolutely loved how you tied that into this planet. I guess more about this world that you've created. I noticed that you like writing about characters in worlds where there can be a slow decline. So in this world, there was something called gray waste, which would kind of like slowly eat away at you in ways. And then in the Greenbone Saga, we had like the madness from the Jade. So I love this element that you added. It definitely adds a sense of like impending doom as you're reading the story, adds a sense of urgency. So how do you, I guess, like come up with these things and figure out how to integrate these elements into the story?
Honestly, they're just things that seem super scary to me. Like,
Yeah.
I remember with the itches in the Greenbone Saga, I read some article. I'm not sure if I could find it anymore, but it was basically an article about this very real disease where people have uncontrollable itching.
Yeah.
And they will like itch through their skin, through like flesh.
Oof.
They'll
Oh my
like,
gosh.
there was an anecdote about this woman whose scalp itched so badly that she itched through her scalp to her skull. Like it was, it was just so horrifying. And this was shortly after. So I had this many, many years ago. My family and I contracted hand, foot, mouth disease, which is not to be confused with hoof and mouth disease, which is the bovine brain eating one. But hand, mouth, foot disease makes your hands and your feet and your mouth break out into blisters. So my kids were quite young at the time, and all four of us got like flattened by this virus, it sucked. Like it was, I remember my hands. So fortunately I didn't get them in my mouth, but I did get them on my hands. And so like hands broke out in blisters, and like I was like submerging them in ice, and like my poor kids who were little, they had like blisters all over their hands. And so I kind of took I was basically like, okay, well, this would be a horrible way to die. So how do I kind of make it into a thing in a fantasy story? And like, that's where the itches came from. And then Gray's Waste in this world, I think also just comes from like this, just the like horror of like neurodegenerative decline kind of tied in with the characters aging and losing their edge and being fearful of being forcibly retired because they're not like useful to the company anymore. And sort of putting that extra icing on the cake of the horror of that with this idea of like losing your mental capacity. So yeah.
Wow.
We just
went there. I loved, the kind of retiring thing. I don't know how much we want to say about that, without spoilers. But yeah, I loved how you created this eerie feeling of, again, it's just like your job is your life and your job equals your life. Honestly, I kept kind of drawing parallels to like Severance, the show. Have you watched it?
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched it, but my daughter has been on it and described the premise to me.
It's so good. But yeah, I feel like there are some similarities with kind of, on one hand, isolating your personal life and your work life. And, they're very separate. They don't exist together. Your work life is a whole person of its own. And then if you quit, it's like that your innie dies, right? So
Right.
Not going to say too much, but yeah, I could definitely see some similarities with that. And I love Severance. So when I saw that was kind of the vibe of this book, I was like, oh, I'm going to eat this up. I'm going to love this so much. So I love that. Fun question, though. If Isako lived in the Greenbone world, what clan would she be in, do you think? And like, who would she be friends with? What would her life be? Would she be a Greenbone?
Oh my gosh. I mean, she'd definitely be a Greenbone. She's clearly like too skilled physically for like either any clan to be like, not train her as a Greenbone. So she definitely would be. where would she end up? I mean, she's probably on the greener side of the clan. Realistically, she's probably probably like a
Yeah.
first fist or something.
Yeah.
But then again, she's definitely got like the corporate side, so like she could be in the weatherman's office.
She could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I see her kind of like Hame in the Greenbone saga, where where a character like Hame like made his reputation as a fist and like has that like that intimidating personality and that like side, and then like retires and joins the Weatherman. Well, retires from like the Horn side of the clan, and then
Yeah.
joins the Ship Street crew and like opens all these like the overseas businesses for no peak. So yeah, I think she would probably be in a role like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
High
that would
up
make
for
sense.
sure.
So I feel like another theme in your books that we absolutely know and love is unpredictability. Like I can never predict where your plots, your characters are going to go. And obviously without spoilers, and this is kind of harder to talk about, but Isako was put into three very separate sections this book was broken into. How did you structure this book when you were writing it? Like, did you write them in order, like that we read them in, or was there some overlapping? How did that happen?
So it has been through a number of structural reorganizations because initially I thought of the story as being a duology. And you can kind of imagine
Okay.
how that would have worked. So I had imagined that like Isako would have a story, and then there would be another novel that would be kind of a companion novel that would see some of those events from another perspective, and they would kind of like overlap. So some of the events would overlap and then they would continue. And so initially I thought of it as a duology, and I pitched it to my editor as a duology. And she looked at my outline and she was like, "Are you sure this won't work better as a standalone single novel?" And I was like, no, it's going to be duology. And here's why. And I had this whole logic. And then I started writing it and I realized, oh, shoot, it totally does work better as a standalone novel. And I restructured it. And like, I mean, the reason why it does work better as a standalone novel is because the way that like I thought about the duology would have kind of really backgrounded Isako in like the second book. And so you would never kind of get back into her point of view to like to complete that character journey.
Right.
And then I started writing it as like a traditional dual point of view story where like some of Isako's chapters would occur and then some of Martine's chapters would occur and so on. And that also, I mean, it sort of worked, but I ended up having this conversation again with my editor, a different editor actually this time. And she said like, well, what if you just hold off and like let Isako's story run, like have her point of view run for a longer period of time. And I tried that and I liked it better. Like I liked the way that like it created this Rashomon effect where you get a different context around like what's happening with once you hit that point where like the perspective changes and you get different information that Isako just was unable to access, in her point of view.
That's so fascinating to me. And like, I can't imagine the time and effort that was put into that and like how tedious it could have become. But I think it was structured so incredibly well. So speaking of this being a standalone, the world was so incredibly rich for a standalone. It was just so detailed, and even the fact that like you had a different way of measuring time, like different days of the week and everything like that. So yeah, how do you set your parameters around creating worlds, especially like compared to bigger fantasy series that, you've got more time, I guess, in that world to like a standalone?
It's pretty much the same process from a developmental standpoint. So the tricky thing with a standalone is that you still have to develop the full world. You don't have any less work to do. But the challenge is that you have a much smaller tighter package to work with. So unlike a series where I can kind of drop a lot of breadcrumbs that I can pick back up and turn into longer things later on in like the second book or the third book, in a standalone, I really have to like be cognizant of picking those breadcrumbs back up like within the same story and not leaving things kind of hanging, because you do want like the standalone to feel fully satisfying and like complete at the end. So I think like efficiency is really just the name of the game with a standalone. You just can't spend a lot of time in like locations or in world building exposition that doesn't drive the narrative, that isn't like essential to the narrative. But all the little details of the world still have to feel fully fleshed out, like the names, the details of day-to-day life, the idioms, the habits that people have. And so all of that stuff is still has to be developed.
Wow. So yeah, still just as much work, really.
Yeah. But you kind of have to constrain the canvas. And I kind of do that somewhat automatically based on the length of the work that I'm working on. So Untethered Sky is a great example where I'm like, I have a novella and that's under 40,000 words. So I was very focused on the world building there being always related to Esther and her experience. And so you know that there's this kingdom, but I never go into like, what are the politics of this kingdom? What is the history of this kingdom? What is going on in like the capital? Like I just don't deal with that. I kind of imply it, but I don't have it as part of the main story. While as like Isako, the world building is like contained to this city that is underneath an air shield. So the fact that I put it on a planet and they are isolated from Earth precludes me from having to be like, what is happening on other planets?
Yeah.
What about their other continent? It's like, there's nothing. Outside the shield, there's nothing. There's like, it's just barren wasteland. Yeah. So that's like an automatic constraining mechanism.
And it's cold, and we hate the cold. Yeah. I wanted to actually ask you about combat scenes and writing kind of physical combat, because I mean, I know you have a martial arts background, of course, and the duels that were in the Greenbone Saga were incredible. Love them. But then kind of moving into like the Breathmarked duology with your experience co-writing with Shannon Lee, I'm sure she brought, her own taste of martial arts to the table as well. So I wanted to ask, while writing action, did anything kind of change for you while having that co-writing experience?
Honestly, no. I mean, I think one of the reasons why Shannon wanted to work with me and why we worked so well together was because she had read my previous work and liked like what I did. And so she kind of knew what she was getting, and wanted a writer with that background. Like, I think that was a big plus in us working together, was that like she could kind of trust me to do justice to like a martial arts scene. And I was a big Bruce Lee fan, obviously. Like it was like, this is like a partnership that's just like an easy match. And so like, I mean, there were definitely like Bruce Lee related Easter eggs that I would put into the combat scenes. And I think being very familiar with like his filmography and having watched all the Bruce Lee films, and like knowing how like Bruce Lee fights and how he moves and his philosophy of like combat helped infuse the scenes in the Breathmarked duology with like the right vibe. It was pretty seamless.
Yeah. And then how, like, when you are writing these physical combat scenes, how do you like envision them in your head? Because like I come from a dance background, so when I read physical things, I need them to make sense in space. And I feel like I've read so many books where I'm like, this doesn't make sense at all in the space that I'm in. So how do you, I guess, kind of keep track of like where everyone is and where all their limbs are and everything as you're writing these scenes?
I mean, honestly, it does kind of come to me like a movie playing in my head. So when I write the first draft, it really is like me just transcribing how I'm picturing it happening. And then when I'm revising it, that's where I really refine it and try to get like the pacing right and the prose right and make sure that there's nothing that's inconsistent or confusing, because I want the scene to move very fluidly. Ideally, you don't have to ever like stop and wonder. It's just, it should just unfold very smoothly. And that just means doing like a lot of wordsmithing to get like the sentence structures to work smoothly and like not get hung up on anything. And it does feel like the easiest part of writing for me, honestly, because it does just kind of happen like a movie in my brain. And I just need to transcribe it and then like edit it in post-production.
And it works. Honestly, like both like Freya and I always talk about with like the Greenbone Saga. We're like, we want this to be a TV show. That would be so cool. Actually, have you ever like wanted to adapt one of your works?
Me personally, so I wouldn't want to be the person doing the script,
right?
Because for me, it would feel like, I don't know, messing up my own work, like taking it apart, because I think you have to have to do an adaptation, you have to have a certain degree of distance to be able to like take a source material and adapt it for a completely different medium. And I've already written the books, like the books are already my thing and they're complete and they're out in the world. So I just have never felt like I would be the right person to do the actual script adaptation. But I certainly hope that, other people take on that challenge.
Yeah.
I've also said to like, the writers who've been involved in like my options that I'm always there as a resource. Like I'm always happy to collaborate. But yeah, novels are my love. I love writing novels, and writing scripts it's a different art form. There's overlap, of course. But it also involves working in Hollywood, and Hollywood moves at a different pace and is slower and is complicated. And I just love the form of the novel, and that'll always be my go-to.
Makes so much sense. Yeah. Okay. Another fun question actually for you. If you could live in any of your fictional worlds, which world would you choose?
This is a hard one, actually. Okay, so I don't want to live on a kilo. No, so I can rule that out. I mean, the world of Darth and Untethered Sky, there's the risk of being eaten, so I don't think don't think I'd go there. I mean, it's tough because the world of the Greenbone Saga is the one I know the best. So it's where I feel like the most comfortable.
Yeah.
And also I would want to go to the academy and learn like, Jade disciplines.
That would be cool.
But I also don't, but also I don't think I'd want to be, a finger in a clan war. So there's that.
Yeah. I'm like, would you be a Greenbone?
I think I would be a Greenbone working on Ship Street. I think that's probably that's probably where I would be. Like I'd graduate from the academy, I get like my 1 or 2 jade stones, and then I'd be like, what help does the weatherman need? Like, can I work in the back office? So I think that's probably what I would choose.
You don't want
like just enough jade powers, but like not enough to make me a target. That's probably ideal.
We love that. Safe space.
It's a bit, exactly. It's a bit of a fine line in that world.
Yes.
So obviously we've talked about Isako having a lot of like the world there having a lot of corporate influences and everything, and a lot of that being inspired by your background. But just a little bit about how is the transition going from such an intense corporate lifestyle to now like being a full-time author and being on tour all the time? How has that transition been? And like personally or professionally, like is it better? I hope so.
It is. I mean, I don't miss the office. I've never at any point been like, I want to go back and do more Excel spreadsheets. Like that's never occurred to me. I mean, I love my job. I love telling stories. And then, I love the satisfaction of sharing the stories and moving on and writing another story. So I have no regrets on that end. I think the transition happened gradually enough that, there were all these stages that had to occur, right? It wasn't like an overnight thing. I was working full time, and then I was working part time and writing on like the day that the days that I didn't work. And then I left as an employee, but like was doing independent contract. I was a contractor for a while, and then like taking on projects for 3 to 6 months, but also working on my book, in between my projects. Mm-hmm. So it took time to make that transition. Mm-hmm. And it's a challenging one. I think anyone who is watching this, who is contemplating a career move like that, or wants to have a creative profession, and also is balancing a day job, I think it's just important to realize that, like, yeah, it is this, if you're turning your passion into something that will hopefully be a career, there'll be a significant chunk of time where it is like a full-time job that just doesn't pay you anything yet. And you have to, kind of create some on-ramps and off-ramps for yourself. But I mean, I work just as hard now as I did back when I was, working in corporate America. But the difference is that I love what I do, and it feels like, I'm putting stories out in the world that people enjoy and that I enjoy writing. That's
love
a lot.
That.
More satisfying.
Yeah. Can definitely relate to that too. I mean, I don't write books, but I have shifted to content creation, or whatever it's called, full time. And so I can definitely, relate to that kind of slow shift of like kind of finding a balance of working both for a while and then
for sure
kind of flipping the switch. Actually, at your Toronto stop of your book tour, you did mention that your Google history is something to be feared for when you're doing research.
I think most writers have a very concerning Google history.
Yeah. I guess I wanted to... What is one of the most memorable rabbit holes that you have gone through on the internet?
Oh, gosh. There's so many memorable rabbit holes. I mean, the horrible itching disease was definitely a memorable one. Yeah, that was memorable. I mean, I wrote this young adult duology earlier on in my career called EXO and Crossfire, in which like a bunch of the characters are like resistance fighters against, and the Earth is controlled by like an alien species. And so I ended up Googling all sorts of things that would be very concerning, like how to mount an armed resistance against the government, and like where to hide from the government, and how to like obtain illegal firearms, and like things like this.
I hope they're not watching.
there were some concerning Google search history there. And then like for the Last Contract of Isako, I ended up doing a bunch of research into, can you transplant a human brain, as you can imagine. And you can imagine why, because there are people who live in synthetic bodies and their brains get transplanted into this cyborg body. And the short answer, after doing a whole bunch of research online, is that not with current technology, we're not close to being able to transplant the human brain. However, there have been some very weird experiments, and some rather macabre ones, involving like dogs' heads being like grafted under other dogs' bodies. And like there's some really horrifying photos out there.
And you saw all of them, unfortunately.
A little bit mentally scarred.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, about the synthetic bodies as well, I remember on tour, you mentioned that you would opt in for a synthetic body, but only after it's been kind of thoroughly tested. And I remember you and I Jiang mentioning, kind of comparing it to something like LASIK, like you wouldn't want to do LASIK unless it's been done. I've done LASIK, so I just wanted to mention I've done the testing for you. It's safe.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
We're good to go.
Yeah. So back when I asked my optometrist about LASIK, they were like, well, for you it probably wouldn't work because like your prescription is too high and like your eyeballs are too oblong. But I think that the tech has like improved since then. Like I'm told now that even people with quite high prescriptions are like potential candidates. So it may be time I get another consultation. I don't know.
It could be.
When things calm down from book tour. I'm not going to do anything to my eyes this year.
Yeah.
Not right now.
This year is a little too much.
Yeah. No, I was.
But that
is
good to know. I'm very glad to hear that.
I was on the border. I was borderline. I was like, we can just do it for you.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Because there's some like standard based on like how thick your cornea is and how much they can shave away.
Yeah. And how like rounded or like how flat. There's a lot to it. It's weird. It's freaky. Anyways, we have some listener questions for you because we do have an online book club. So getting into some questions directly from our listeners. Freya, do we want to get into the first one?
So this one is from Steph. She asked, for someone who is really looking forward into getting into your works, which book would you recommend is the best place to start?
Oh my gosh. I think it really depends on what you're in the mood for and whether you want to invest in a big series or not. So I think if you don't, and you just want to kind of get a taste for my writing, I might start with Isako because it's a standalone. So that's like a really good place to start. I still have a real soft spot in my heart for Zero Boxer, which is my debut, which is also very like a contained and easy read. But if you are ready for like a big investment, then it's got to be Jade City.
Yeah. All great places to start, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, from Revin, how do you decide what is going to be a series and what will be a standalone? I guess we kind of talked a little bit about this with Isako almost going to be a duology, but I guess for other books, how have you kind of decided on that?
It's really dependent on like the scope of the story. And sometimes I go in just being like, I feel like writing a standalone or I feel like writing a series. And then like finding and then deciding what idea kind of is best suited for the length. But other times it really just is like the scope of the idea. So I knew, for example, Greenbone Saga was like at the time it had to be written as a contained first novel with series potential. But I knew from the start that it was just a big story that could be multiple books. While as like Untethered Sky, for example, originally I started off writing it as a novel and then it wasn't really like working for me. And then I got asked to write a novella and I revisited it and reimagined it as a novella. And then it just worked. It worked better in that format. So it really just comes down to like the nature of the story and whether it is kind of a big idea or like a more contained idea.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah.
This is our last one of listener questions from Kimmy. She asked, how do you come up with the names for characters and then the places as well in your books? That's a really cool question, actually.
Yeah, I love coming up with names. I think that's like one of my favorite parts of world building is just coming up with names.
Yeah.
And I think it's because there's a kind of truth of world building that's maybe a little bit counterintuitive, which is that specific things are more powerful world building tools than general things. So if I just say car, right, you can picture a car, but everyone's going to picture like a different car and it doesn't really give you that much information. But if I say like, you know, a Jeep Wrangler or like a Ford Taurus, like now you have a specific like image in your mind of what that car is. So if I can give a specific name to a thing, even if that thing doesn't exist, you're much more likely to like have a sense of it being real. And like that is the logic behind like me giving names to all the luxury cars that are in the Greenbone Saga, right? Like there's no such car as a Duchesse Prisa. But like you can just kind of picture what it is, like it's a luxury muscle car. It's like and the fact that it's like Hilo's signature car and it's a big white sedan, like you can. It's just it just makes the world seem more real. And like names have so much power. They just create like a grounded sense of the thing in your mind. And they also say a lot about the history of that thing and like where it came from. So in Isako, for example, the names of the different kiths, the family names, are all connected to their ancestral things from Earth that these people have never seen. They're utterly unfamiliar with. Like, they've never seen an island or rain or a stork or trees. Like, they've never seen any of that, but they have carried that, like, those terms with them to this new world. And it's a constant reminder of the fact that they're trying to make this barren planet into what they imagine to be the paradise of Earth, which is kind of faded into the realm of mythology for them at this point.
Yeah.
Right. To end off our episode, we're just going to do a fun few rounds of this or that. So, number 1, who would win in a fight, Isako or Hilo? That's a tough match.
Yeah, that's a bit brutal.
We're stumped.
This depends. I mean, is Isako in her prime or is she in her current? And like, what age are they? Like, I assume we're gonna say they're both the same age and like in their prime, because that's the better match.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so Hilo has Jade powers, which I think gives him a pretty insurmountable advantage.
Yeah.
So I think that Isako has about like 2 seconds to get the jump on Hilo with like a quick knife draw. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, then she's cooked. I think that's kind of what happens. I mean, what do you guys think?
No, I think is
that accurate?
That makes sense.
Jade powers.
I feel like that tracks.
I know, because it's like Jade powers.
Can't beat the Jade powers. But yeah, if she's quick at the start, she's got a chance. Right. But yeah, I agree. Once that moment's gone,
past, yeah.
Bye.
She says herself that's like how she wins most of her fights is like in the first few seconds.
Yeah,
so.
she knows her strengths. Yeah. Okay, another kind of random one. Would you rather never have eggs Benedict ever again, or would you rather never be able to have tea or coffee while writing?
Oh my goodness.
I'm so sorry.
These are hard. These are really difficult.
I don't know why.
I actually feel like I'm being interrogated because just the unfortunate nature of where I'm sitting in my office, I actually have the bright sunlight like on my face, and I'm sorry it's like dancing on my face, but it is like the spotlight shining on you, being like, I have to have some caffeine when I'm writing, so I can't give up tea. I'd have to give up eggs Benedict, as sad as that would be. But like, no, I need my caffeine to be productive.
It's so fair, though.
Yeah.
So fair.
It's a requirement.
All right, and our last one: revenge arcs or redemption arcs? We're coming out with the hard hitters right at the end.
That's heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy. I mean, ideally both. Like ideally both. Ideally both. I mean, this is where you have the gif of like both. Both is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I love a good revenge arc, but I think that they're often very simplistic, right? Like, I think the revenge arc is at its best when it gets complicated.
Yeah.
So I think that like, I mean, a simple revenge arc like John Wick can be like kind of, I mean, it can be satisfying, but I prefer the revenge arc where it's like the revenge mission gets like really thrown for a loop in some way. And then ideally it can also turn into it. So I guess like a complicated revenge arc is probably my answer, but but a good redemption arc is always was great and work. Although again, right? It's all in the execution. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah. We'll allow both since it was the last one. We'll allow both. All right. Well, all that to say, thank you so much, Fonda, for joining us today. Obviously, we loved The Last Contract of Isako. Anyone out there who hasn't read it yet, definitely pick it up. Also, look out for Mark of the Warrior coming out later this year. But yeah, thank you so much for chatting with us. Had a great time.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me on the show.
Amazing. Okay, well, for everyone who is still here listening to the end, thanks for listening wherever you are in the world or whatever time zone you're in.
Until next time, stay comfy and keep reading.
Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on socials for more bookish content.
Bye. See you next week.